The obese widow's Christmas candles got 0 buyers. A cowboy bought them all and lit them for her. Half price. Take it or leave it. Sarah Harrison stood in the marble foyer of the Whitmore mansion, her worn boots sinking into carpet so thick it felt like shame. Mrs. Whitmore held one of Sarah's candles between 2 fingers like it might contaminate her. But Mrs. Whitmore, we agreed on. That was before I saw them up close. The woman's eyes swept over Sarah, a look that measured everything and found it wanting. They're too rustic. Given your situation, I thought you'd be grateful for any sale at all. Sarah's throat burned. She needed that money. All of it. But standing in this grand house with her plain dress and work-rough hands, she knew she had no power here. Half price, she whispered. Mrs. Whitmore dropped coins into Sarah's palm without touching her hand. Martha, next time order from Brennan's in Denver. Proper craftsmanship. The dismissal couldn't have been clearer. Sarah quietly left the mansion. Walking down Main Street afterward, she nearly collided with elderly Mrs. Patterson, who was struggling beneath an armload of packages. One tumbled into the muddy street. "Oh dear," the older woman exclaimed. Sarah immediately bent down to retrieve the box, wiping it clean with her own sleeve before handing it back. "Bless your kind heart, child." Mrs. Patterson squeezed her arm warmly. Not many people would stop to help anymore. Everyone's gotten too busy, too caught up in themselves. "It's really nothing at all," Sarah said softly. "Kindness is never nothing, dear. Never forget that." Sarah continued walking home through the biting cold. Home was a small house at the edge of town, hers and Thomas's once. Just hers now. She counted the coins Mrs. Whitmore had given her. $3 short of what she needed. Thomas's photograph watched from the mantel, capturing him young and smiling and so heartbreakingly gone. "Help me get through tomorrow," she whispered to the empty room, to God, to anyone listening. Tomorrow was the Christmas market, her last chance before the landlord came demanding payment. She worked through the night making candles, the craft Thomas had taught her, the tradition that had been theirs. Now it was all she had left. When dawn broke, she packed them carefully and walked to town. The market was already bursting with life. Other vendors had elaborate displays with garlands, painted signs, and tables draped in fine cloth. Sarah's table was plain wood. Her candles simple. "Excuse me." Vernon Brennan stood behind her, frowning. "You're blocking the view of my display." "I was assigned this spot." "Well, it's not working. Move to the corner by the alley." Sarah looked where he pointed. The worst spot in the market, shadowed and hidden from shoppers. "Please, Mr. Brennan. Move or leave." She moved to the corner. Hours crawled past. Shoppers browsed her table, picked up her candles, then set them down when they noticed her watching. They whispered to companions and moved on. A woman leaned to her friend, loud enough to carry across the space. "Buying candles from her feels unlucky, doesn't it?" Then disaster struck. 3 boys came racing through the crowd, laughing and not watching where they were going. They slammed directly into her table. Candles flew through the air and scattered across the cobblestones. Delicate wax cracked. Wicks bent beyond repair. Sarah dropped to her knees, scrambling desperately to save them, tears already burning in her eyes. "Watch where you set up." The boy's mother appeared, her face red with manufactured rage. "That's your fault. You're always in everyone's way." A crowd quickly gathered around the scene. She blocked the path where children play, taking up space she doesn't need. A man's voice rang out, sharp with disdain. Maybe if she wasn't so hard to miss, the boys would have seen the table. Laughter rippled through the crowd, cruel and casual. Sarah's hands trembled as she gathered broken pieces. Not a single person stepped forward to help. They just stood there watching. The children ran into her table. The voice cut through the murmuring like a blade. A man stood at the crowd's edge, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a rancher's coat and an expression that made people step back. The sheriff stood directly beside him. The boys weren't watching where they ran, the man said, his tone brooking no argument. Not the other way around. The mother stammered something incoherent. He crossed to Sarah and knelt in the street beside her. He started picking up candles with surprising care. His hands were gentle. "Are you all right?" Sarah nodded. He righted her table and arranged the candles neatly. He set aside the broken ones without comment. When he stood, he looked directly at her. "Don't let them make you small." Then he walked away before she could respond. Sarah whispered to his retreating back, "Thank you." An hour dragged by. 2 customers eventually approached and examined her candles with critical eyes. "These are damaged," one said, pointing to a hairline crack. "I can fix that right now." "No thank you." They left without looking back. Nobody else came to her shadowed corner. As the market closed, other vendors packed up around her. Sarah sat alone with candles nobody had wanted. The tears came then, quiet and broken. She had failed completely. How much for all of them? Sarah's head jerked up in shock. The rancher stood at her table again. She shook her head slowly. He was mocking her. He had to be. He knelt so they were at eye level. "I'm serious. Every single candle. Name your price." $5, she whispered. $15. He laid bills on her table. "That's what they're worth." Before she could respond, he gathered every candle and carried them toward the town square. People were gathering for evening carols. He arranged the candles in one wide, perfect circle. Then he lit them one by one until the square. The crowd fell completely silent. He stood in the center of that warm light, looked across to where Sarah still sat frozen, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "For the woman whose light this town tried to extinguish." Sarah stood there crying openly as the square filled with the golden glow of her work. And for the first time in so long, she felt truly seen. Sarah woke to persistent knocking at her door. For a brief moment, she thought yesterday had been nothing but a dream, the disaster at the market, the humiliation, the rancher who had somehow turned her rejected candles into something beautiful. But the $15 sitting on her table confirmed it was real. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. She opened the door to find him standing there, the rancher with his hat held in both hands, looking oddly uncertain for a man who had commanded an entire crowd the night before. "Morning, ma'am. I'm Ethan Cole." "Mr. Cole." Sarah became suddenly aware of her unbrushed hair and wrinkled dress. "I hope I'm not calling too early." He shifted his weight from one boot to the other. "I wanted to bring you this." He held out a thick envelope. Sarah's stomach tightened with confusion. "Mr. Cole, you already paid far more than." "This isn't for yesterday's candles," he said quickly, as though he had rehearsed these exact words. "This is a deposit for more candles." "More candles? I'd like to hire you. My ranch needs candles, quite a lot of them." Sarah could only stare at him in disbelief. "The house is big and gets dark early in winter," he continued. "I've been buying cheap tallow from Brennan's Supply, but last night when I saw your candles, the way they burned so clean, the scent they gave off." He paused, then said more quietly, "It felt like home. I haven't felt that in a very long time." "You want to hire me to make candles for your ranch?" Sarah said slowly. "Just around 100 candles. For the main house, the bunkhouse, my office. I'm hosting Christmas dinner for the ranch hands, and I need them ready by Christmas Eve." He held the envelope out again. "This is half payment up front. You'll receive the rest upon delivery." Sarah took it with trembling hands and opened it carefully. $50 lay inside. Her entire rent was only $12. "Mr. Cole, this is far too much money." "It's a fair price for quality work," he said firmly. "Can you do it?" 3 weeks to complete the order. Sarah thought about her empty days stretching ahead, her quiet house, the loneliness that filled it. "Just, I can do it." "Good. That's settled then." He placed his hat back on his head. "Thank you, Mrs. Harrison." "Mr. Cole," she said before she could stop herself, Why are you really doing this for me? He met her eyes. Because your candles are genuinely good work. And because last night I watched this entire town treat you like you were invisible. I figured someone should actually see you. He tipped his hat and walked away. Sarah stood in her doorway holding $50, wondering what kind of man bought a widow's candles and simply called it fair business. A week later, Sarah arrived at the Cole Ranch carrying her first delivery of 20 candles wrapped carefully in clean cloth. The ranch spread across the valley, wide and working, the house large but unshowy, built for living honestly. Ethan met her at the door. Right on time. I try to be professional, Mr. Cole. Ethan. Please. He took the bundle from her arms. Come inside. I'll show you where they'll be placed. The house was clean but stark, furniture without softness, walls without decoration. It was clearly a place where someone lived, but didn't quite belong. I want them throughout the house, Ethan said. Something to make it feel less empty. It's a beautiful home. It's just a structure, really. He paused. Sorry, that sounded more bitter than I meant. It sounded honest. He examined the candles closely. These are even better than the market ones. I had more time to work on them. The scent is remarkable. He breathed it in. My wife used to grow lavender before everything changed. Before what changed? Before she died. 3 years ago. Her and our daughter. Complications during childbirth. I'm so terribly sorry. Small towns know everyone's grief, he said quietly. They don't talk about mine either. Your husband? Last winter. His heart stopped one morning. They stood together in silence, two people who understood loss without needing to explain it. The candles will help, Sarah said at last. They'll make it warmer. I hope so. He walked her to the door. Same time next week? Yes. I'll look forward to it. Sarah rode home wondering why those words stayed with her. The second week, he asked about her process. She explained while her hands demonstrated what words couldn't. He listened as if it mattered. The third week, he showed her the ranch, the horses, the land rolling toward the mountains. His voice warmed with pride. The fourth week, he appeared at her door carrying firewood. I noticed you were running low. She made coffee. They talked about loneliness, about loss, about the empty spaces grief leaves behind. Do you think it ever gets easier? She asked. No, he said honestly. But it becomes more familiar. Easier to carry. That's not very hopeful. No. But it's honest. She smiled. You're very good at honesty. So are you. Something passed between them. Quiet, unspoken, and real. Same time next week? He asked. Yes. But this time, when she rode home, she wasn't wondering anymore. After 5 weeks of deliveries, a storm arrived. Sarah was sitting at Ethan's kitchen table finishing the last batch of candles when the first raindrops hit the windows. Within minutes, the gentle rain transformed into a violent torrent. Lightning cracked the sky white. You can't ride home in this weather, Ethan said from the doorway. It'll pass soon enough. Thunder shook the entire house. Could last for hours, maybe even all night. He kept his voice careful and respectful. The guest room's already made up. It's completely separate from mine, far end of the house. Sarah wanted to argue with him. But the storm was getting worse by the minute. And a dangerous part of her didn't want to leave. All right then. Thank you. I'll make us some dinner. Nothing fancy. I can help you. You've been working all day long. Let me take care of it. She sat at the kitchen table watching him move around his own kitchen like a complete stranger, pulling out pans and examining ingredients with obvious suspicion. Do you cook often? She asked. Define often for me. More than once a month. Then no, I don't. She laughed before she could stop herself from the sound. Ethan turned toward her with a half smile on his face. Am I really that bad at it? I didn't say anything at all. Your face said everything. They ate simple food together, bread and cheese and preserves. Nothing fancy about it. But sitting across from him in the warm lamplight with rain beating steadily against the roof felt more like home than her own house had in many months. "Tell me something," Ethan said quietly. "Something that no one else knows about you." Sarah considered his request carefully. "I talked to Thomas, my husband, out loud. I know he can't possibly hear me, but I do it anyway. That's not strange at all. Isn't it though? I talked to Elizabeth, my wife, and to Clara, our daughter." He stared down at his plate. "Sometimes I forget what their voices sounded like. That's the absolute worst part of losing them. The forgetting. You don't truly forget them. You just remember them differently than before. Is that really better? It's honest." He smiled at her words. "There's that word again between us." Morning came gray and quiet after the storm. Sarah woke in an unfamiliar bed, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. The storm. Ethan's house. The guest room he'd offered. She heard sounds coming from the kitchen. She smelled something burning. She found Ethan staring at a pan of completely charred eggs like they had personally betrayed him. "Good morning," she said from the doorway. He jumped at her voice. "I was trying to make us breakfast. I can see that quite clearly. It's not going well at all." Sarah crossed to the stove. Smoke rose from the pan. The eggs were beyond any saving. The bread had turned to charcoal. "What happened here?" "I got distracted and started thinking about something else." He stopped himself. "It doesn't matter now. I burned breakfast." Sarah looked at the complete disaster, at his sheepish expression, at the coffee boiling over that he hadn't even noticed. And she laughed out loud. The sound came full and bright and real. Ethan froze completely. "You just laughed." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. The sound died immediately. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry about it." He stepped closer to her. "Do it again for me." "I can't." "Why not?" "I haven't laughed, not since Thomas died." Her throat closed up. "It's been so long I forgot how it feels." Ethan's expression shifted into something determined. "Then I'll remind you how." He grabbed an egg and tossed it in the air. He missed the catch completely. It splattered across the floor. Well, to damn it. He tried juggling 2 more eggs. They collided midair and crashed down. He told her a joke, but he told it badly. The punchline made absolutely no sense. Sarah smiled at his efforts. But the laugh wouldn't come back. It was like her body had forgotten the mechanics of joy. Like grief had built a wall she couldn't cross anymore. Ethan saw it clearly. The way she pulled back from happiness. The way joy cost too much now. "All right," he said softly. "But I'm not giving up on this. Just so you know." "Mr. Cole." "Ethan. Please. This is completely foolish." "Maybe it is. But you smiled just now. That's something worth celebrating." An hour later, Sarah was preparing to leave when Ethan stopped her at the door. "Thank you for staying here. For not making it strange between us." "It wasn't strange to me." "Wasn't it? Widow and widower alone together. Small town like this. People will talk. Let them talk all they want." His eyes held hers steadily. "You don't care what they think anymore?" "I stopped caring when they stopped seeing me as a person." Something shifted in his expression. "I see you, Sarah. I truly see you." Her breath caught in her chest. "I know you do." She rode home with her heart pounding hard and her skin warm despite the cold air. 2 days later, she returned to the ranch with the final delivery of candles. She could hear voices coming from the barn. Ranch hands talking among themselves. "The boss sure does buy a lot of candles from that widow woman. He probably feels sorry for her. Just a charity case." Makes sense when you think about it. What other reason would he have? A woman who looks like... Sarah didn't wait to hear the rest of their conversation. She left the candles on the porch and rode home immediately. That night she wrote a brief note, order complete. "Thank you for your kindness." She told herself it was better this way. She told herself she'd misread everything between them. She told herself that men like Ethan Cole didn't choose women like her. Margaret Whitfield arrived at the Cole Ranch on a Tuesday morning carrying a basket of baked goods and wearing a smile sharp as glass. She was beautiful, everyone in town said so. She had blonde hair that never frizzed, a waist men could span with their hands. She was the kind of woman who moved through the world knowing doors opened before she reached them. Ethan's housekeeper let her inside. Margaret set the basket on the kitchen table, and that's when she saw them everywhere. Candles on the mantel, the sideboard, the windowsills. Dozens of simple beeswax candles that smelled like lavender and something else warm. "Ethan, where did all these candles come from?" she called out sweetly. He appeared from his office with paperwork in hand. "Margaret, I didn't know you were coming today. I brought you some scones. I thought you might be hungry." Her eyes swept over the candles again. "These are quite quaint. Where did you get them?" "Sarah Harrison makes them for me." "The widow." Margaret's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind her eyes. "How charitable of you to support her little hobby." "It's not charity at all. She's genuinely good at what she does." "I'm sure she is." Margaret touched one candle and examined it closely. "And I'm sure she's very grateful for your business. A woman in her position must be." "What position is that exactly?" "Oh, Ethan, don't be dense about this." She laughed lightly. "Alone and desperate. It must be nice to have a wealthy rancher taking such an interest." Ethan's voice cooled noticeably. "I hired her because she makes quality candles. Nothing more than that." "Of course," Margaret said, her smile showing all her teeth. "Nothing more." 3 days later, Sarah was at the general store buying wax when she heard Margaret's voice calling to her. "Sarah, how lovely to see you here." Sarah turned around. Margaret stood with 2 other women, both from prominent families. All 3 were smiling. "Hello, Mrs. Whitfield. I visited Ethan's ranch this week and saw your candles everywhere." Margaret's voice carried across the store. Other shoppers slowed down and listened. "Quite the enterprise you've built for yourself." "It's just an order I filled." "Oh, I'm sure it's all very innocent." Margaret's eyes glittered. A widow making candles for a lonely rancher. Taking advantage of his charitable nature. Everyone can see what you're really doing. The entire store went quiet. "I'm not taking advantage of anyone." "Aren't you though?" Margaret stepped closer. "You're ingratiating yourself to one of the wealthiest men in the county. Making yourself indispensable to him. It's transparent, Sarah. Everyone sees it clearly." "That's not what I'm doing." "You're trying to trap him. Using your sob story about your dead husband to make him feel sorry for you. It's clever, I'll give you that much." Sarah's face burned with humiliation. The other shoppers were staring openly and whispering to each other. "I'm just filling an order. That's all this is." "Of course," Margaret said, her smile pure poison. "Whatever you need to tell yourself." Sarah left without buying anything. She rode home with Margaret's words echoing endlessly in her mind. Trying to trap him. Charity case. Transparent. Maybe Margaret was right about everything. Maybe Ethan did pity her. The ranch hands thought so. Margaret thought so. Maybe Sarah had been foolish to think otherwise. She wrote a note that night. "Mr. Cole. Order complete. I can't continue our arrangement. Thank you for your kindness." She sent it the next morning. Ethan appeared at her door that evening. He didn't knock. He just opened the door and walked in like he had every right. "Why did you stop?" Sarah stood up from her chair. "Mr. Cole, you can't just walk in. It's Ethan. And I can. Why did you send that note?" "The order's complete now." "That's not why you sent it." He crossed the room to her. "What happened?" "Nothing happened." "Sarah." His voice was firm. "Tell me what happened." "Margaret came to see me at the store." Sarah's voice shook despite herself. "She said I was taking advantage of you. Trying to trap you with my sob story. That everyone can see what I'm really doing." And you believed her? The ranch hand said the same thing. That you feel sorry for me. That it's all charity. Ethan's jaw clenched. I don't give a damn what the ranch hands think. But they're right, aren't they? You saw me humiliated at that market and you felt sorry for me. That's why you bought the candles. That's why you hired me. Out of pity. You think I bought your candles out of pity? Ethan's voice was low and dangerous. I bought them because when I saw you on the ground picking up broken pieces while that crowd blamed you, I saw myself. Alone. Invisible. Grieving. And I wanted you to know someone saw you. Not because I pitied you. Because I recognized you. Sarah's breath caught in her chest. I hired you because your candles are genuinely good. Better than anything Brennan sells. And because sitting in that empty house surrounded by light you made feels less lonely. He stepped closer. That's not pity, Sarah. That's need. Margaret said. Margaret is scared. His voice softened. Scared that I might choose someone real over someone beautiful. And she's right to be scared. Sarah's heart hammered. Ethan. I'm not stopping. Not because of Margaret. Not because of ranch hands. Not because this town thinks I should choose someone thinner or prettier or more appropriate. His eyes held hers steadily. I'm choosing to keep seeing you. And I need to know if you're choosing that too. Sarah looked at this man who had knelt in the street beside her. Who had lit her candles for the whole town to see. Who had called her light instead of burden. Yes, she whispered. I'm choosing that too. Christmas Eve arrived with snow and starlight. The town square was decorated for the annual celebration with garlands, ribbons, and a massive tree lit with candles. Tables were laden with food. Music drifted from the church. Ethan Cole sat at the head table as chief guest. The organizing committee had insisted, given his standing in the community. Margaret Whitfield sat beside him, co-hosting the event. Her family had organized it for 20 years. She wore blue silk and a smile like armor. Sarah Harrison sat in the back row. Mrs. Patterson had insisted she come. You can't hide forever, dear. So Sarah came wearing her best dress, still plain and worn, and tried to be invisible. It wasn't working. People stared and whispered. She heard fragments of conversation drifting past her. The nerve to show her face here after everything. After what Margaret said about her. Still trying to trap Ethan Cole. Sarah kept her eyes on her hands. Margaret stood at the front and rang a bell. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our best Christmas candles display. Several women approached with elaborate candles. Margaret examined each one and praised the craftsmanship. Sarah watched from her seat. These were good candles, professional work. Nothing like her simple creations. Then, before she could stop herself, Sarah stood up. She walked forward with the small bundle she'd brought, 6 candles she'd made for herself and her home. Mrs. Whitfield? May I enter these? The square went silent. Margaret's smile froze on her face. Oh, Sarah, how sweet of you. She examined the candles without touching them. I'm afraid we're featuring quality craftsmanship tonight. Professional work. These are very homemade. They are homemade, Sarah said quietly. Exactly my point. Margaret handed them back. Perhaps next year. The dismissal was clear. Sarah stood there with candles clutched to her chest while every eye watched her. She turned to leave. May I see those? Ethan's voice rang out. He was standing and moving from the head table toward her. Ethan, really, this isn't necessary, Margaret started. He didn't look at her. He just took the candles from Sarah's hands gently and examined them the way he had that first night at the market, like they truly mattered. These are beautiful, he said. Ethan, we have a program to follow, Margaret protested. He walked to the center of the square. He set the first candle down and lit it. What are you doing? Margaret's voice had an edge now. He lit the second candle, then the third, arranging them carefully in the snow. These candles were made by a woman this town has tried to break, Ethan said, his voice carrying across the silent square. He lit the fourth candle. A woman who kept working when everything said to stop. He lit the 5th. Who creates beauty from grief? He lit the 6th. Who makes light for others even when her own world is dark? The candles glowed in the snow, simple and perfect. Margaret's voice shook. This is completely inappropriate. Ethan turned to face the crowd. You want to know what's inappropriate? How this town treats Sarah Harrison like she's invisible. How you mock her and blame her and refuse to see her worth. He looked at Margaret then. You wouldn't display her candles because they're not quality enough. But every candle in my house came from her hands. Margaret's face went white. Ethan turned to Sarah and walked to where she stood frozen. The square was dead silent. He knelt down in the snow. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah Harrison, his voice was steady and sure. I'm not asking you to make candles for my ranch anymore. He took her hand. I'm asking you to make a home with me. To bring your light into my darkness. To let me do the same for you. Will you marry me? Sarah couldn't breathe or speak. Tears streamed down her face. Yes. He stood and pulled her close. He kissed her in front of the entire town. The square erupted with applause, gasps, and whispers. Margaret's voice cut through the noise. You're choosing her? Over everything? Ethan turned to face her with Sarah still in his arms. I'm choosing the woman who's been told her whole life she's not enough but kept going anyway. His voice was steel. I'm choosing someone real over someone beautiful. Someone brave over someone cruel. Yes, Margaret. I'm choosing her. I'll always choose her. Margaret's face crumpled. She turned and fled through the crowd. Ethan looked at Sarah and tickled her side gently. She laughed, surprised and bright and free. She grinned. There it is. What is? The sound I've been trying to get for weeks. He kissed her forehead. Worth the wait. Around them, people clapped. Some cried. Some ashamed. Mrs. Patterson dabbed her eyes. About time someone saw that girl properly. The church bells rang out. Ethan took Sarah's hand. Ready to go home? Which home? Ours if you'll have it. Sarah looked at this man who had seen her when she was invisible. Who had lit her candles when the world said they weren't worth keeping. Who had knelt in the snow and chosen her in front of everyone. Yes, I'll have it. I'll have you. He kissed her again as snow began to fall, soft and clean, covering the square in light. And in the center of it all, 6 candles burned, simple and perfect and bright enough to chase away any darkness.